All right. Let's get this out of the way first. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed on Tailboard Talks Firefighter podcast are solely those of the speakers, guests, and host, and do not in any way represent the thoughts or views or opinions of any other employer, partnership, or sponsor. The material and information in this podcast is for general information purposes only. It should be used at the listener's discretion. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tailboard Talks, 4th-Shift Firefighter podcast. My name's Chris. And here we are. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm hands-free. I got this new microphone here. I've tried it out a few times. It's worked well. And I have no redundant measures. So if it's not good, you won't be hearing this. You'll be hearing another recap episode or replay episode. But welcome back to the show. Before I get going, please go check out my affiliates. Rescue One CBD, 0.000 THC, safe for the job, awesome company. I use their products and I like it, and I've turned a lot of people onto it. No, I'm not a drug dealer. Yes, I am one of their affiliates. So check them out. The other one, Fourth Frontier heart rate monitoring. They have a heart rate strap called the X2. It's awesome. It records all the standard heart rate stuff you'd expect from any other big name company, but they also have a live EKG, a live lead 2 EKG. So you can look in after your workout, after you record your session, go back, check it out and see what your heart was doing. Or if you're wearing the strap, you can do a live look in real quick and watch lead 2. Pretty awesome feature. I use it a lot. I use it for all my training rides and my training that I'm doing for this big bike race coming up in August. So check them out. Discount codes for both of those things. Check out the show notes or my affiliate area of my website, 4thshiftfirefighter.com. The third one is, I put up the thing the other day on April 1st that said, thank you Dunkin' Donuts, or thank you Dunkin'. Don't want to misrepresent them. They're actually donuts for a short while, if you saw that. Thank you, Dunkin', for your product partnership and your podcast sponsorship. They didn't bite. I did not get them. I even sent them a message afterwards, no response. I'm going to keep trying, though. We're working on that one, okay? If you know anybody at Dunkin', just point them in the right direction. Point them here. Let's see if we can get you guys some coffee. Two things this week on firefighternation.com, which I have an article on there, not a big deal, but go check it out. I mentioned it a bunch. It's called Any Day is a Good Day for a New Year's Resolution. Go check it out. It's applicable, especially now in the end of the first quarter of the new year, because it's all about why setting specific, meaningful dates to start a behavioral change are more important than using an arbitrary temporal landmark like January 1st. Check it out. But on there, I was checking it out, and there's a really good article from a guy from O2X, Alex Redshaw. So I'm going to run through this article, just the bullet points real quick, because it's a fitness article, and the title of it is The Aging Firefighter, Health and Fitness Considerations Through a Career. I liked it specifically because he puts a lot of information in here. All of it is cited. All of it is referenced to reports, studies, actual real stuff. And so that's one of the few ones I've seen of that where it's like small, short, digestible. When I wrote, they said around 700 words, which was surprisingly compact. He did that, and he put a ton of information in. So here's a few bullet points from it, okay? And like I said, each of these bullet points I mentioned is going to have at least 2 resources listed after it, 2 sightings listed after it. At least 1, sometimes 2. First one, research indicates that physical performance declines to pre-recruit levels within the first year of a firefighter's probationary period. Then we have the trend persists throughout a firefighter's career, with fitness, movement quality, and body composition and cardiovascular health continuing to deteriorate with age. That one has 3 citations behind it. Next one, firefighters face a disproportionate risk of sudden cardiac events, accounting for the majority of line-of-duty deaths. In addition, for every fatal cardiac event, there are another 17 non-fatal line-of-duty cardiac events annually. That's a big one. I think a lot of times we think that unless it's a major heart attack or LAD, something big happens, then nothing happens, right? But there's a monster batch of non-fatal line-of-duty cardiac events. Then we move on to a little bit of strength and conditioning stuff. Lower levels of muscular strength, endurance, and flexibility coupled with reduced cardiorespiratory fitness correlate with higher rates of injuries among firefighters. That one's got several citations behind it. Then it says Dunstan and colleagues identified increased musculoskeletal injury expenditure and a lost workdays among older firefighters. Remember, the name of this is The Aging Firefighter, Health and Fitness Considerations Through a Career. So they did specifically look at beginning, middle, end of the career. And what they found was towards the end of the career, 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, that's when the big buck injuries happen. That's when the big dollar loss from sick time and injuries happen. That's when stuff kind of goes sideways. So it was a really good article for highlighting those with facts and figures. And then we have one more. The inherent loss of movement quality during aging may be attributed to the increased rate of muscle mass, size, and quality deterioration that begins around 40 years of age before increasing again around 60. So it just says that, in my mind, what this article shows, and one of the big factors is the better you start at, the better chance you'll be healthy when you end. If you start at a low point, go to the academy, get in marginally better shape, and then that's it. Chances are you're going to revert back to pre-academy levels, like it says in here, and then deteriorate literally, not literally, but in line with your age. So just something to think about, guys. That's not a death sentence, though. It's not the way it has to be, because in there he also gives, first of all, he does a really good job of his recommendations after that. I didn't want to read those here because then I'd just be reading his entire article. I also do want you to go check out firefighterNation.com because they've supported me, so I appreciate that. So please go support them. But he gives very specific, very good, actionable steps for nutrition, sleep, fitness, and also cardiovascular health in his article. So go check it out. It's called The Aging Firefighter on firefighterNation.com. The Aging Firefighter, Health and Fitness Considerations Throughout a Career by Alex Redshaw from O2X. Okay, second part of this bad boy. I put up a question box the other day on Instagram that said, what cultural changes do you want to see in your department? And you guys came through, man. Lots of good ones, a couple repetitive ones, but we have increase in fitness culture, increase in training culture. I want to see progress not be hindered by tradition. I want to see an increase in mentoring and decrease in gatekeeping, meaning stop saying you got to wait your turn and start saying I'll show you how to get through this. I would like to see a focus on proficiency and skill over simply time served. So not throwing seniority out the window, but also not saying they've been around for long enough so they're better than you, right? And also I'd like to see an increase in accountability up and down the chain. All very, very good things that you would like to see and very, very good things to work towards, and all things that you might want to change. Now, when we talk about change, tricky, right? Kurt and I have been dealing with physical change for a long time when he had the gym and I worked for him. We've been trying to change kind of the culture and the way our department runs with physical fitness. And I'm not going to say we've been super successful. We've accepted a lot of the constraints the department has given us, and kind of played the cards as we could, played our hand as we could, and settled for kind of what I'm going to tell you today, which I've taken a lot more personal pride in, which is thinking smaller and changing your idea of impact and change from quantity to quality, right? Because when you look at it, depending on the size of your department, you may be looking to quote unquote change between 30 and 200 to 500 to 1,000 people. And there's so much that every single person brings in terms of factors of why they do and don't do things, that the only person that can really make a cultural change overnight is the chief, because he can policy a change into happening that you must comply with. And even then, there's going to be some non-compliance, right? So I went back and thinking of like, what kind of fire department culture pops into your mind first? Like kind of like the reactivity test. Like I say a word and you say the first word that comes to mind, right? And before that, I thought, well, what kind of cultural changes do we have due to policy that have kind of worked themselves into the fabric of my department? And I have a few here, a few funny ones. The first one is that in my department, we clean the rigs at 8 p.m. That's like the department standard. And some captains have chose to say, no, we're going to do it the next morning because that makes more sense. Why would I clean the rig at 8 p.m. and we're going to be out all night and it's raining, and then the next crew has to come in and clean the rig that we dirtied up overnight? Let's just clean in the morning. But until that happened, until we started making that change individually, years after it got implemented, and I'll tell you why, it was always 8 p.m. You'd go out there at 8 p.m. The reason we did that is because my department was established in 1867 when there were horses, and you had to scrub the horse poop off the wagon wheels before you went to bed, or else it stunk. That's why you scrubbed the rigs and the tires at 8 p.m. Flash forward over 150 years now, we're still scrubbing the rigs at 8 p.m. That rule, that policy got put in place when there was like 6 guys on my fire department. Now there's over 100. Now there's 140. It's persisted, right? And it became the cultural norm of our department. Go scrub the rig at 8 p.m. Why? Because that's what we do. Why? Because 150 years ago, there were horses that crapped on the tires, or the wagon wheels rolled through the horse crap on the way out. Another one, in my department, if you go into the locker rooms, you'll see towels hanging on the side of the hamper. Now we have a laundry service at my department that does like bath towels and some other stuff. It's a company in town, blah, blah, blah. It's an old relationship. During the recession in 2008, the chief came out and said, we got to start drying our towels before we throw them in because the service charges us by the pound. So we need to make each batch of laundry as light as possible so we don't get charged as much. That's the reason that we hang towels before we put them in the hamper. Before that, the bags weighed 50 pounds and they're full of wet towels. From that point until now, you will very rarely see a wet towel in the hamper. You'll see 5 or 6 of them hanging on, around, or near the hamper, but you won't see any wet towels in the hamper. It was because of a policy that says we need to save a couple bucks. We get charged by the pound, dry our towels off. Now it's the cultural norm in my department. You won't see a wet towel in the hamper. And then the third one I have that I think a lot of people can relate to is masks. Like them or lump them, right? You may not want to wear them. You might not have to wear them. But I'll tell you, in my department and some of the surrounding departments, it's very strange now to see someone on an EMS call not wearing a surgical mask. Not everyone has to wear an N95 in all situations anymore, and we're not wearing masks inside the station anymore, thank God, and let's hope that never comes back. But when I started, you'd have people with the flu coughing all over the place, and your measure was to tell them to face that way and just face away and turn on the exhaust fan in the ambulance. Now, if you have someone that says they were sick 2 weeks ago, it'd be hard for people not to wear a surgical mask, right? You think about the things we did then without a mask. Why haven't you been wearing masks the whole time? And it's not a policy anymore in a lot of circumstances to wear a mask, but a lot of guys still do. And I still do in a lot of circumstances because it makes sense in a lot of cases, and I don't mind it. And why were we doing this before? So masks have greatly woven their way into the fabric of our culture in my department. Then I got to thinking, like, well, what kind of things are not policy related that are part of the culture of the fire service? And then we get to the fun stuff, right? Mustaches. By fun stuff, I mean making fun of them, because what are you guys doing with mustaches? What is going on here? It's not like, you don't really think they look good. I know that. And at a certain point, like, the irony of having a mustache has to wear off, but I just don't understand when. Maybe it's different for each person, right? But yeah, mustaches are like a fire department thing. Big old pickup trucks. I feel like that one's fading, but it still has a stronghold near us. Big old pickup trucks are a firefighter's thing. Big old air haulers, as Kurt would call them. Leather things. We love leather. It's one step away from being inappropriate. We love leather things. Anything you can make out of leather and paint and stamp and put some stitching on and maybe even your name on and a Maltese cross, it's going to be sold immediately. We also love zippers on boots because even though the left and the right side of the zipper have never met each other, they really, literally do not know the other one exists. We have to have zippers on our boots because we're just that tactical and awesome, and we like sounding like Santa's sleigh walking down the hallway. And the last one, more contemporary one, is nicotine. Now these things are all based in not really status, but like belonging, right? It's part of the culture. It's part of their group. All these things are acceptable in the fire service. If you walk in with zippers on your boots, you pull up in your big truck, you jump out, you have a mustache and a Zin, you're like, oh, that's a fireman, right? If you roll up to the library like that, you would not think, oh, that's a librarian. But these are all parts of the fire department culture, okay? So when you have all these things, how do you change your fire department culture? How can we ever expect to change something like that? Well, I want to take a little step back from changing specifically fire department culture and just talk about change in general, okay? And the best way I can tell you, if you're looking at this mountain, right? Let's use a different one. If you're looking at this elephant or looking at this whale and you have to eat it, the saying goes, you eat it one bite at a time. Think smaller, okay? Think smaller. And the two ways you can think smaller are who and what. Now, if I'm trying to get my crew into working out, okay, I want to make that the change. I want to make the cultural change in my department, or department of working out. 140 people is big, right? My shift of 30 or so is smaller. My crew of 5 at the station is smaller. My 2 other guys on the quint with me is even smaller. And then me is the smallest. If I want to affect change, I got to figure out the lowest mark on that scale that I can make it at and then build from there. If my crew isn't bought in, if my station isn't bought in, and I'm preaching to the department how we got to do this big cultural change, it loses a lot of work along the way. Even if you don't think it does, right? Even if you're the subject matter expert and you're charged with going out and addressing the entire membership, they're going to look at your crew and be like, well, those guys don't work out. So is this just something he has to say? Is this something he actually believes? Is he not working on that? Is he more concerned about looking good in front of the chief, so he's going to preach to everyone instead of taking care of his own backyard, right? If you want for real change, look to the smallest level that you can and affect that, and then grow from there, okay? And you don't have to have 100% compliance, but you need to start at the lowest level possible, which means you. It's hard for me to tell people you should be working out 3 or 4 times a week if I'm not working out 3 or 4 times a week. And that goes with anything you're trying to do, right? It's hard to people. It'd be hard for me to tell someone you have to go to outside training and you have to go to outside classes. You must do that when they can look back and see that I have not done that for the past 3 to 5 years. You have to practice with yourself first, okay? And if it's something you believe for real in, and if it's something you really want to impact the department with, more people kind of gravitate towards that and say like, well, I want to get in shape too. I know Chris is doing that, so I'll go talk to him. Maybe I can do it in conjunction or something like that. We can kind of work together and I can learn from him, okay? So think small. Think about impacting your little universe first. I've said it on here a couple times, and I believe it. The best thing you can do is take care of your own little universe, okay? Take care of the people who are going to take care of you. Focus on the 3 to 5 people around you. Make that as good as possible, and then maybe others take note of it, okay? The alternative to that would be, you think you guys are good. I'm going to go torture myself now with trying to affect people I see at various intervals around the year, maybe once or twice a year, but it's really going to just drive me nuts when they don't buy into what I'm trying to preach 100%. Take care of what you can take care of, man. The other thing you have to do is make sure, and I wrote down a couple, as I was going through writing these notes about who and what, the 2 small things you can think about. I started looking at online articles about cultural change and just behavior change in general. And it had a lot to say about societal norms and industry norms and the cultural capital of the people, which is just the attitudes and values and aspirations and stuff like that. One thing I'll tell you is that whatever you're trying to do, whatever you're trying to change or implement or introduce, make sure it's within the industry and societal standards of the people you're preaching it to, okay? Yes, a church raise is a fire department thing that exists. So is a 24-foot single-person throw. If I have the goal of increasing training in my crew, right? Let's say that it's just not a crew likes to train. That's just not their thing. They don't like it. They'll avoid it. Some people might even call in sick when it's time to do it. If I say, you know what, I'm going to focus on me, and I'm going to train every morning from 7:30 to 9. That's a great tactic if you're doing stuff that's within the realm of normalcy. If you go out there and you're doing stuff that does not relate to your job, that no one has an interest in, that may not be applicable, if you're rappelling off the side of your station, if you're trying to do a church raise alone, if you're doing all those things, all you're going to do is drive those people further and further away and be like, that guy's a nut job. I didn't want to train. I definitely don't want to do his training. If you go out there and you do donning drills, shifting and dumping, emergency escape stuff, single person throws, forcible entry on your prop, all the stuff that's in the bread and butter wheelhouse, right? Then, okay, I don't want to do training because of the unknown. I don't know what he's going to do. I don't want to be made to look stupid. I don't want to spring a bunch of stuff on me, but I see what he's doing. It's all fundamental stuff. I got a handle on most of that. It's relatively risk-free, right, in terms of looking dumb. Maybe I'll go out there and hit the door a few times, or maybe I'll go out there and throw a ladder a few times because I feel pretty good about that, so I'll just go do that. You have a better chance of bringing people in, is what I'm saying. So just make sure whatever you're trying to introduce is at least the industry norm. It's at least accepted by the industry, okay? And then pay attention to, is it acceptable and is it normal behavior for your department? And if it's just a low level infrequency of happening and you want to bring it up, that's great. If it's not there at all, you might have a little bit tougher time introducing this thing. Unless, of course, like I said, you're the chief, and with a stroke of the pen, you policy that bad boy into being the new cultural norm. That's always an option too. Now, when I talk about thinking what as small as possible, that lends more to just like mechanical skills, operations, things that you can perform of change, right? If you want to get better at forcing the door, throwing the ladder, if you want to lose weight, right? Look at the smallest level of what first. So let's use weight loss as that example. Improve fitness. That's what I've written down here. I don't want to get too far away from my notes. Say you want to run a marathon, which I'm not saying that's the pinnacle of fitness. It's because it isn't. But that's a goal that a lot of people have, right? I want to run a marathon. Let's break that down into the smallest what possible. Marathon's one thing. 10K is another thing. 5K, 1 mile, 400 meter, walk. Or the smallest would be get up, right? Which is also the hardest barrier to overcome when you're sitting down and just don't want to get up. So maybe instead of saying, I'm going to run a marathon, I got to go run my 17-mile long day and start working on my intervals. Maybe you say, hey, this Tuesday, when I normally don't do anything, I'm going to get up. That is a great place to start, okay? That's a great example of thinking small and getting going and building momentum. We talked about momentum in the last 2 episodes ago with psychological and mental momentum. Build that skill on skill thing. We also have a great saying in my department, it's crawl, walk, run. That's how that's how the training division has kind of made itself and structured their drills, crawl, walk, run, right? It's kind of the same thing you learn in fire officer of like teach one, lead one, watch one kind of thing. But yeah, start small, right? Start with the smallest thing that you can do and build on top of that. There's a famous strength coach that he said, if you wanted to start flossing, I would tell you to floss 1 tooth the first day and then put the floss away and go to bed. And the next day you floss 2 teeth and that's it, and 3 teeth and that's it, and 4 teeth, and it builds until a month later you flossed all your teeth in one shot, right? Start small. Think small. It's going to feel underwhelming. It might feel unfulfilling at first. But here's the thing. Please try to adjust your idea of success from quantity to quality. Because there's no telling what those people that you influence today do 5 to 10 years from now. We do shift bids in my department every 2 years. If over the course of 2 years, I get someone who's not working out at all to maybe work out twice a week, and they take that with them, and 10 years from now, they're still working out twice a week. It'd be great if they did more than that by then, right? But in the meantime, they've gone through 5 different companies, and maybe they've got someone else to work out twice per week. It's kind of like tell a friend who tells a friend, and this thing blows up, right? Yes, originally and initially, your impact might feel very small and underwhelming and not what you want because you're not impacting the department. But you are impacting the people of the department. And those are the ones that are going to make the difference, right? If you influence your station, and your station was not a big training station, and at the end of your 2-year run, it is a decent training station, and you leave, and that station still remains a decent training station, 10 years from now, they'll have had 5 new crews, 25 people through that station, right? Potentially. Bad math. You get the idea. 25 people going to 25 new crews, and it keeps going out and out and out. And then you're going to get people who, hey, I worked at Station 5 years ago. Yeah, I worked there 3 years ago. Do you remember doing this? Yeah. They're at the same station. Now that's 2 out of 5 members at that new station doing that thing. What I'm trying to highlight is that changing the department, changing the culture, changing anything, doing it in one shot isn't likely. And doing it over the course of a couple of years isn't likely. But over the course of your career, you may be able to get something done. And it's very difficult in the immediate gratification society today to see that. But if you look back at some of the cultural positive things that we have in the fire service, and then look back to when they started, it was decades ago. It was decades ago, and it was usually after that person got out of their department, retired, and started teaching it, that's when it started getting traction. But before that, for the 30 years before that, they gained traction in the department. So we're looking at, let's say they had a 30-year career, they retire, start speaking, 10 years later they catch on, 20 years later it's a thing, 50 years. From their probationary year to now, when you think you want to adopt this thing that they're preaching, it's been 50 years of them trying to do it. It might take some time, but you can do it. Start small. Think small.
challenge yourself to think small, okay? And watch that little thing grow. Seed, grow, oak tree, whatever you got to think. Plant the seed, do it all. Anyways, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Hopefully this audio is good. Check out my affiliates, Rescue One CBD and Fourth Frontier Heart Reminder Strap. Go message Duncan on Instagram and Facebook. Tell him to come listen to the show, and tell him that Firefighters run on Duncan too, but the fourth shift especially does. The fourth shift runs on Duncan. Make them send me a cease and desist letter. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for hanging out. Be a fourth shifter. Bye-bye.